The Immersion Foundation presents deep conversation with ambassadors on the cutting edge of combative arts as part of a greater mission to revive the study of haploology through research, expeditions, and archival projects around the world. The Immersion Foundation combines rigorous academic research with hands-on immersion in the combative arts and elite performance training, forging a new path of growth, adventure, and contribution.
And I was like, oh, dummy. Yeah. Okay. So today, last week we covered Michelle's background and her story, so to speak, as a starting point. And today we had requested her to speak of her teacher, Olohe Solomon, and get into as many details as possible. Yanni, you're the timeline keeper, so don't worry about interrupting me or interrupting Michelle or anybody else. Ask what you need to ask. That's important. Nobody's going to take it as disrespect or anything. We just want clarity. And Michelle, since this will be a critical piece of the overall historical timeline and things like that, the more specific you are about the times and the years, the better. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So with that, I want to hand it to you, Michelle. Let's start Olohe's story right from the very beginning, wherever you want to start, and we'll go from there, including his growing up, his service, his starting to learn Lua, his interactions with Lima Lama, the other groups,
Mm-hmm.
whatever is involved, and making the decision to start coming out and teaching in public, right? So the whole 9 yards. Over to you, and I'll shut up.
No, never. Just make sure to interrupt me if I have skipped over something or you need more clarification on something. And I'm actually just for integrity, I would like to just read the portion that he had in his book about his life,
Please.
because that's from his own words that he approved. And then I can add also what
Yeah.
I know that's not in the book. But first, I wanted to dedicate just love and respect to his family. It's his wife, Christine Kaivalu, and his 5 children, and there are many grandchildren and great grandchildren now. And so that would be Starnani Kaivalu, Solomon Jr., Leilani, George, and Derek. And so I want to honor all of them for putting up with Olohe, loving him so much, and understanding that he was just had a purpose in his life, which probably took a lot of time away from them. So I'm going to start with his history that he wrote in his own words. And so Kolomona Solomon Kaivalu was born December 2nd, 1935, in the Palama settlement of Oahu, Hawaii. He was one of 14 children born to George Kaeha Kaivalu and Cecilia Kaukini Kalekini Kaivalu. So his father was from the Kona area on the Big Island of Hawaii, and his mother was from Kauai. He was 3 years old when he began training with his father in the Kaivalu art of Lua. Um, he began his Lua training at 3, specifically with his mother in the hula to learn the animals. That's how he really began in the front of the house when he woke up every day. This is what he told me. So his father showed him the way to walk as a Lua warrior. And there were times when both his mother and father would tell him stories or mo'olelo about the history of the Hawaiian Lua and showed him the hand movements using a dancing hula chant that were also used in the family art of Lua. At the age of 4, his parents would play games by throwing wood or clubs to each other to help him learn eye and hand coordination, balance and body rhythm using his hands, arms, and legs. At the age of 13, he began assisting his father in teaching the Lua to the Kai'ivalu family bloodline in his hometown of Nanakuli. He said, I remember my father taking me aside and telling me to get up early each morning, smell the air, study the air around you, work your mind in the early mornings, and work your body to the limits, because this is the best way you can remember what Mama and I gave you on our Lua and to give and share our family Lua with your family here in Nanakuli, end quote. From 1944 to 1948, Solomon shared his family art with those who lived in the city of Nanakuli. So if you're not aware of where that's located, it's on the west side of Oahu. At the age of 15, while living in the hometown of Halava, Solomon would go to Palama Gym and watch students training in martial arts of Kaju Kempo karate. Soon after, he began to explore and compare other martial arts such as karate, kung fu, along with wrestling and boxing, comparing each one to his family's art of Lua. In 1955, at a military boot camp in Parks, California, Solomon taught military personnel the Kaivalu Lua way of ku'i boxing and moko moko dirty and free for all fighting. I'd like to insert there that it's actually transposed in Hawaiian culture. Ku'i is actually the dirty way, and moko moko is actually the very structured boxing. And in the makahiki, the Hawaiian Olympic Games, if you will, moko moko was so regulated, like competitions of the sumo. So think of it in that way. While stationed in Europe, at Bitburg and Hahn air bases in Western Germany. From 1955 to 1960, he instructed many of the pilots and non-commissioned officers in the use of the ka'ane. Ka'ane is a verb, means to strangle, but it's also a noun in the sense that it's the name of the strangling cord, and that's called ka'ane. And so he would teach them the basics of the ka'ane, but using their boot laces in case they were actually downed in the Air Force and were attempting to be captured. So they'd use their laces of their military boots. And that's very hard. You have to have some time to get those out, but you can think about using a belt too, which is I teach today for women. In 1963, 8 years of service in the U.S. Air Force, Solomon received an honorable discharge. After his discharge, he continued teaching his family art of Lua to the members of the U.S. Air Force in Denver, Colorado. Sometime later, in 1963, he moved to Orange, California, where he has continued to teach his family art to all those who come to him to seek and learn the family art of Kaivalu Lua. This meant non-Hawaiians as well. The Kaivalu name literally has two meanings depending on how it's pronounced. Kai he Valu takes on the meaning of Kai, the sea, he, and the Valu, 8, thus meaning the 8 sea. If it is pronounced as Kai Ihe Valu, then it takes on the meaning of Ka, Ihe, the long spear, and Valu, 8, thus meaning the 8 spear, or the 8-pronged spear. Solomon holds the fourth generation family title of Olohe, a term that was not brought out until the 1960s, which translates as a skilled warrior Lua fighter in the art of Hawaiian Lua. The title was handed down from his ohana, his family, generations of grandfathers through his father. Olohe Kaivalu's official rank in his family art of Lua is Umi, Kumu Lua, 12th degree, along with the Lua family title, level of Alihi Kaua, leader or headmaster. It also means general in the king's army, King Kamehameha. In the family animal of Mo'o, or dragon, Mano, shark, and He'e. He translated this as squid, but it's actually octopus. He says, quote, I bring the beginning as I share the ending, my first food of Kaivalu Ohana Lua. I share with you my parents' mo'olelo legends and stories and history and teachings. First, how to walk backwards, then how to walk forward, how to step, where to step, and who to step with. I respect my elders of old and the kapula of the Hawaiian Lua, but not following their halau, for it belongs to them and them alone. What I share with you now is the Lua of my ohana, the Kaivalu Ohana Lua. End quote. So you can see that is a nice summary of what he did in his lifetime, but it also took 8 generations of patches for him to actually come out and share the Lua because it was so kapu forbidden. and interesting, that word also in Maoli, ancient times, kapu doesn't mean forbidden like it's used today. It actually meant sacred. And when you think of that word, it's not something that's forbidden, it's something that's so sacred that you approach it and learn it and hold it and teach it with such reverence. And so that's the way I think he saw his family's sacred information throughout generations being passed. Well, his story here says that the titles of Olohe were passed down through his father's side. He did tell of a story where they were at dinner and his mother and father started to banter with one another. And his mother was actually more proficient in Lua than his father. His father's favorite weapon was the longbow or the ko'oko'o, and which also means cane in Hawaiian, but it's the longbow. And we all know when you hear of like Asian masters, beware of the elderly man with the cane or the bow. This was his father. In fact, it was his favorite weapon, so much so that his nickname was Bow. And his grandson, from his Alohe's fifth child, was also named Bo. So you can see he was so proficient in his favorite weapon, but his mother's favorite weapon was the hoe, the paddle, which makes perfect sense because she's right above the water, the Bay of Vili Vili, not Vili Vili in Kauai, and she was of royal lineage. So I assume that she was highly proficient, even more proficient than his father, as he spoke of. Then she also held the title of Olohe. Like most ali'i or royal women, they learned the deadlier version of Lua because if their kia'i, their guardians, were off busy or they weren't there at the time, they had to learn how to defend themselves too. So, like I mentioned last week, there's also the Kaukini and Kalekini lineages from his mother that are absorbed within the Kai'aiwalu. So go ahead, Mahipo, you had something to
Yeah, so
ask?
the genealogy is so important, right, within the Hawaiian culture. So when you say that his mother was of royal blood, who is she connected to and how? What's that genealogy?
So it's the Kaukini and Kalekini families, and so they were of royalty there in Kauai.
Okay.
So I haven't actually done the genealogy beyond that and the other surnames that came before that, but I'm very fascinated and it's on my list to do that because I need to know, like, were they originally from Kauai? Did they come from Tahiti or the Marquesas? What type of Lua? Because I'm sure you spoke with the elders of the ancient Lua, and there were many migrations, obviously, but you've got two different types of predecessors to the Lua that we know now, even in the Maoli, the ancient sense. This is a bloodline where the others are research based and collaborations of other Lua
Mm,
masters, if you will. The Lua that came from Marquesas, we believe, is very spiritual. This is dealing more with first the metaphysical, the unseen, non-physical aspects of how to manipulate mana without having to do that with your physical body. Whereas the Tahitian Lua is very brutal. There is tales of when the Tahitians brought war to Hawaii that there was blood in the water. But I later found out it was from what they call a rebel woman warrior, a leader, a general, with all of her canoes making her way to the Hawaii, but they were wearing red. So the red was reflecting upon the water because there were so many of them. So you've got two different types of Lua, one very, very physical, proficient, technical, and the other one, not that it wasn't all physical, but they dealt more with manipulation of mana and energies before they dealt with the physical. So when you look at Tutu Kai'aiwalu, and what she brought to the Kai'aiwalu Lua, I still am so very excited to discover that even at this late time in my journey. And so something to look into more in the future.
second question is you mentioned he's the fourth generation Olohe. So what do we know about his father, grandfather, and great grandfather, their names? What kind of stories that you have and what they practiced?
I can get that for you. Alohe, while everything is very much about lineage in the Hawaiian culture, some of us, myself included, keep that very quiet because there are others that will go digging and it's none of their business. So he didn't actually give that to us. What styles that they studied, but we do know Ma'a is the grandfather of
Okay.
Kai'iwalu, George, Olohe's father, and then before that is Kapena and Kali Hiole. I can give you these. So that's the great grandfather. And
It'll be good because then we can honor him and their names correctly so that it's
sure.
recorded. It's recorded right, you know?
Yes, so I will send you this so that you have it. But so we do know that much, but beyond that, we don't have much information. Obviously, you can easily find that within some of the genealogy records that are public
Right.
now. So yeah,
Okay. That makes sense. So, what I think the next logical question is his list of graduates. Of course, he's been teaching since the 60s, right? He's taught,
yeah.
he's touched people, thousands and thousands of people, right? So,
I,
were there groups of quote unquote graduates that passed out of Olohe Solomon, and
yeah.
who are they and where are they today?
Well, I can't name those before my time, but even during my time, he kept us sequestered. We were only supposed to focus on our own journey, and he handled everything. It was about control too, because people came and went over the years during my training, and they just didn't stick with it. So he
Mhm.
dealt with that. We paid no attention. Um, so, when he started teaching with Lima Lama, contributing, I would say, for 2 years. It was 1960 to 1962. And as you know, there are 6 gentlemen that contribute to Lima Lama. And when I look at it, even the older videos that I see, I could see that Lohi really didn't contribute all that much. And then, of course, a game of telephone, they adapt that and make it their own. So I won't speak any more about Lima Lama, but he did give us the letter, his resignation letter, so that we have a copy of that. Um, those that were in the tournament circuit, the time of the 80s and into the 90s, Aloha had several schools, also one that was in the valley. And him and his children, 4 primarily, the first 4, not the 5th, because he was a little bit young, they are they should truly be given the credit for putting Kaiwalu and Alohe's patch to be recognized because of they were fierce competitors, but and all they did was go to school and train Lua, and this is how they grew up. So their style is a lot different than some of us that came a little bit later. um, he would hold tournaments. They also owned a martial arts supply store, him and his wife Christine. There are stories of other individuals coming into the school and challenging him. Um, Old school stuff. So he was dead set as he rubbed elbows with all of the greats at the time. Long Beach Internationals, you're talking Ed Parker and Mike Stone and all of the other great masters he has pictures with, that he wanted to be, while he wanted his family's Lua to be as viable and as feared as some of these other arts, and he used his children to do that. So much so that sometimes he would give directives to not win, but to get disqualified. And that was to show the power and the devastation and the realness of the Lua. So that's what I know about like the tournament stages. I'll speak of one of the, well, I'll just talk about him now. Kumu Lua, David Crapes, is in the Valley. He's still in the Valley. And
When you
he
say
was
valley, what do you mean, Michelle?
San Fernando Valley.
Okay, okay.
Sorry. And
I,
he
I in my head I hear Silicon Valley, so I'm like,
Oh,
you know,
Silicone, yeah, because you're right up there.
yeah.
So he was the forms champion for Lua. So he had his students, like his daughters were extremely great at forms as well. But David Crepes was the grand champion. I was switching on and off with Starnani and Leilani during that time. And so he ended up opening a Kaiwalu Lua school in San Fernando Valley, and then he began really training pro fighters and people in the Olympics and infusing Lua into his one-on-one training and his classes. And since then, he became a guru, I think, of a guru of or I forget what the title is exactly, but in Muay Thai. So he infuses Lua hidden within the Muay Thai, and he's trained so many pro fighters that have are just excellent. So he's still in the Valley, and he was inactive with us, though, training personally in person in Orange County. So that was all part of the tournament age of Olohe and Chris, and how he really exposed the Kaivalulua to the public. Um,
Um, I have a couple of questions. So let
uh-huh.
me get the easy one, the facts out first, and then we'll get to the stories, if that's okay with you. So presently now, who's authorized to carry the Lua flag forward, so to speak, for the family?
Okay, so these are the individuals that were given written permission on June 5th, 2009. I call that the Kumu letter. You're authorized to teach the Kaiwa Lua, and it's not just one; it's many. So those that are active today that have this permission are Ron Burns, Greg Shaner, David Crapes, Tim McGuire, Jeff McGuire, and myself. And these are the ones that are only Lua, as well as Ramsey Tom in Hawaii and Isidro Trujillo in Illinois. I should probably backtrack to say that Tim McGuire and Jeff McGuire are located in Oklahoma. So those are pretty much our bases. Um, those that are inactive are Joe Kahapea here in Orange County, Rick De La Fuentes in Orange County, Pete Evans, who left in the early 2000s, so I'm not sure if he was given permission or not, and Jason McNeely, who was given permission, but he has since died. He's deceased. So those are the individuals that are solely Lua. There is another group that um, broke away after Olohe's passing in July of 2019. And these are all the students that were really virtual remote students that were learning through VHS and DVD and would see Olohe once or twice a year. And their primary art is not Lua. They came through the World Black Belt Association, which is an association that Olohe formed because because of his background in martial arts and his genius, and he was approached by other martial arts practitioners who they knew their art, and asked if they would consider taking them on and promoting them because their masters had died. And so Lohi formed the World Black Belt Association, and that's how a lot of these virtual Lua students came in and eventually joined Kai Ivalu Lua. And there are quite a few out there in this virtual group. They're teaching all over now. They have adjusted the ranking systems, and they promote quite quickly. And there's just two different groups. One that is fully supported by the family, which is the first names of those that I mentioned, and then there's those that are not necessarily. I try not to be the Lua police. Initially I was, and I just let people do what they're going to do and focus on what I need to do. So now those that are only Lua, and they were given the Li'ikawa, or general title and responsibilities, on March 5th, 2015.
No, thanks for that. It's never pleasant, some of these things, but
Mm.
it's a piece of the overall story. So what I'd love to hear from you right now is like, if, as a long-term student of Olohe, what does that journey with Olohe look like, right? Number one, in terms of, okay, how do you progress in terms of what he teaches you and how he teaches you in a broad way? So we get an idea of, okay, this is the progression, right? Not so much about the rank, but, talking about the 15, 20-year progression, what does that look like? What animals came in when, or, the weapons, or if there was a method to the madness, or it was just like, hey, today I feel like doing X, So love to hear that from you directly. And any teaching stories, if you will, where who he is and what it is like to train with him comes out. So people reading this or seeing this sometime in the future will at least get a feel for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. So ranking is important because it encompassed a certain curriculum for each one, which most of us have. So he had colored belts, and brown belt, pre-black. There was never really any rank in Lua in ancient times. You just progressed, and eventually, if you continued, you would become an Olohean expert because it wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
title until the 1960s. And then you would eventually be bestowed the title and responsibilities of Kumu, which is teacher. So if Lua became your life and you expanded beyond and wanted to share and you've made it your own, then you would be given that title and responsibilities. Um, so he had changed that and made these color belts to because the tournament space was so important, where do you put students? So in order to for others to understand the proficiency of his students, he kind of assumed what would be Asian. So he had orange, purple, uh, blue, green, brown, and there were 3 and 4 levels to each of these colors. And then black belts 1 through 4 were considered intermediate ranks, and anything 5 to 11 was considered advanced. And at that point, you would be given also a military title. Um, and I can get you the animals of each of those if you wish in the future.
Yeah, yeah, Michelle. I think it'll be good because then we can have a standardized view of it, and then everyone knows exactly what it is, and especially as confusion grows with, say, the bloodline, direct line, and other lines, and people
Mhm.
want to know what's really there. They can compare it with, they just know that this came from the source.
So although he was like no other as far as well, they're all unique, right? These martial masters, but he was a genius. He was highly adept in physics, and how the body worked and how the breath affected that. He was ahead of his time. So he says, as an individual, as a man, he was laser focused, unrelenting, a perfectionist, a visionary, and highly deadly when you put all of that together. He had tremendous mana. You could feel him from across the room, and if he touched you during class, you would feel it for a couple days. So Alohi spent all of his time in Lua. There was nothing else for him. He was either working out for himself, he was perfecting his system teaching, or making weapons. And I think that he hoped this way of life would be for his children and for his students as well, based on um, the expectations he had for us, and the advice he would give us. And he was an extremist, yet he had an unmatched depth of aloha, love for those that he cared for. He just had his own way of showing it. And he often spoke in parables so that to see if we could figure out exactly the core message that he was trying to give us, and if it was really hitting home. So he was formidable as a teacher. You feared him. You wanted to please him. You wanted to perform properly. You never wanted to be a degree off on the lower body or the upper body. He was the best teacher for some of us. Others that came and went over the years, clearly it wasn't the right environment for them, or art. So a lot of injuries for everyone. And I think the whole it was so old school. You didn't know if it was like pain and driving yourself to a bar brawl with multiple people every class. You really weren't sure if you were going to be able to walk out of the garage, drive home, or if you're going to be, taken by an ambulance. So your job every class was to survive. Well, that worked for some of us, and we actually learned. There were others that I could see where they were just in PTSD and responding and really not retaining anything. So the sloppiness continued, the injuries occurred. So he was just really building his militia of those of us that could adapt and also put it into our bodies and learn and not just be wild. He was remarkable.
I think that makes sense. I think, Michelle, it'll be great if we kind of get the syllabus, and then what we'll do is that each of these sessions, for example, we'll say, hey, let's talk about the empty hand stuff. Let's talk about the spear. Let's talk about the kane, and then essentially do a deep dive with each of the weapons and how does
Sure.
this particular form of Lua use this, the forms, the general principles, and things like that. So I think that's going to be our request to you, that if you can send that to me, say sooner the better, and then I'll structure the next conversations around that.
Okay.
Second piece is one of my favorite questions. Is if I was to say, okay, Michelle, give me the dirty dozen of Olohe Solomon. What I mean by the dirty dozen is 10 to 12 sayings that he would say all the time, you know, 10 to
Oh
12
my
things that he would say
goodness.
all the time, and 10 to 12 principles that he kind of hammered, like the one thing I remember with my sensei is no matter how deep my stance was, he'd say lower, lower. That was just one of those things. Like if I think of him, I just hear lower in my head,
Hmm.
So curious to hear some of the major sayings that you would have and you would shout out to everybody all the time.
Well, obviously, again, you know, um, there was a lot of profanity. So, what the f is that? And then a hit. Do it again. What's wrong with you guys? You guys have two left feet. Um, Yeah, I mean, it's things like that, he would say. I probably have to go into my mental archives and just sit and thank you for that, because maybe I can transport myself back into time and really, I'll definitely, that's on my list now to get to you. But
In
yeah,
terms of his expression of his Lua, what were some of the key principles that, or ideas that he would say, okay, this is what my Lua is all about, and this is the hallmarks of my style of Lua. What would those be?
well, I mean, obviously, is to be very quick, but very proficient as far as accuracy and quickness. Mana comes after that, but he would always say to develop our mana. I think it's the structure of the body, honestly. He's a big, if you were a degree off where the wahine, the woman, was leaning over the kane, the lower body, the man, he would come over and just slap you or say, what's wrong with you? Why are you leaning over? Why is your pelvis tucked too much? Why is your pelvis not tucked at all? He'd come over and kick your feet, your legs, to make sure that, you're wide enough. You're not, you're too wide. He was a structure. He never said structure. I say structure now, but I could tell that if the family, the ohana, the wahine, the kane, the man, the keiki, the children, the mo'opuna, the grandchildren, if they were not where they were supposed to be, then you were not effective. That's what he looked for in other martial arts. So you could tell. Everyone will say form, but it's actually structure. Where is the spine? How are you generating those? You can't generate mana if you're not completely in where where you should be.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it was for him. It was really about walking the right way and being in structure. This is what I believe.
Anything else? So structure, that's very important. Anything else that he emphasized?
Oh, obviously guard, don't give them anything, talk and be ready, and really learn your body, be able to move quickly. And he wasn't really just about like the masculine physical in and out, he did do a lot of circular movements, which I do believe came from his hula, which he never really shared with us, but you could see it in his Lua. So I think the smaller the movements, the quicker you'll be, and then you can release your mana. I think that's what really made him very deadly. It's almost as if he could anticipate what someone was going to do.
Mhm.
He was that advanced.
Yeah. I met him just once with Art Gonzalez and some of the others. So we had spent 2 days with him at the Union College.
Up
In
north, yeah, by
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Good. I'm glad you got to meet him.
Yes, I remember it well. uh, um, Next question is, what about his collaboration with the other Lua lineages, whether it's Charles Ken, Uncle David, and the others? What was the interaction or sharing or no sharing that happened? How did that work? What do you know about it?
Well, like with everything, it's a progression. I think so the belief is, from what I understand, is that, that here on the continent, there's, all these arts, all these competitions, all these masters, and there's, they call it the flavor of the month. So
Mhm.
you adjust to, well, it could be viewed negatively to adjust to those around us in our current martial arts
Mhm.
community and what's happening in the world. That can, it could be viewed as negative by those that want to uphold that what was. But Olohe was a big proponent of adjusting so that we would be viable and Lua would still be able to handle the type of athletes, MMA fighters, and other arts that are also evolving. So this
Mhm.
is not always something that is accepted by other lineages. Also, no one can really question Olohe because it's a blood lineage. It is
Mhm.
his family lineage versus research based or a collaboration. Um, it was also frowned upon vehemently that he was bringing it to non-Hawaiians and was out in the public.
Mhm.
This is something even beyond what he was teaching that came into also the microscope. But to teach non-Hawaiians cultural warrior art uh, really is not acceptable, even to this day. And with some lineages, some family arts still are quiet. They are experts in certain things. Maybe it's empty-handed, maybe it's one weapon, maybe it's they're from a different topography. And then there's others that do teach other Hawaiians, in programs, and they're doing very well, and that's wonderful, wonderful to see. But for Olohe to be so public, to be on the continent, not home, and to teach this flavor of the month, it's really it's incomprehensible to some. Um,
He
and
was
some of
ahead
the
of his time.
students,
Yeah.
yeah, would you say?
No, I said he was ahead of his times. So.
Yeah, and he took a lot of heat, and he did receive quite a few death threats because of the way that he operated. But without him, the world really wouldn't
Would
know
not know Lua. Yeah.
Lua at all. And
Yeah.
without him, I wouldn't be here either. Now I don't have the hurdle of being a woman in this space as well, but and mixed. But it's what he did, he felt very strongly called to do, and I'm so grateful he did.
Mm.
Um, so it's not. He did collaborate with one other Olohe of another art in Hawaii. They were very good friends for quite a while, and they would speak, here and there. They were good friends. But as far as Alohe's
Would you be
relationships,
okay sharing the name with us?
that is Olohe Jerry Walker.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Olohe Solomon, he wasn't the only one that brought Lua to the continent. There was
Yeah.
also Olohe David Nuhiiva, and Olohe didn't, Uncle David didn't really teach Lua except to one person that we know. His art was mixed, his Lua was mixed in with his Japanese training, martial
Mm.
training. So, Olohe Solomon really took the brunt of teaching Lua outside of Hawaii.
So did the God, Charles Ken lineage and Olohe's lineage. Did you all mix? Did you all exchange things, or it
No,
was just friendly?
separate.
Hey, okay,
Yes. The
okay,
relationship between Alohe Walker and Alohe Kayuvalu was personal. And Alohe had many friends that we didn't know about. And he kept that to himself. I think he wanted us to focus on our own journeys, but even to this day, it's very difficult. Just last week, I received a message through social media. It was a gentleman reaching out to a friend, for a friend, and that friend apparently studied with Olohe Sol, and I have. He said VHS and DVD, and I thought, okay, that's a trigger for me. Yes, he probably did then. This is a virtual remote student, and he said he had seen some forms on YouTube, and they looked like Elohe changed them. And so I wrote back to his friend that was writing on his behalf and said, no, it's probably just sloppy. That is my Kumu opinion if I was to see it. And so I was able to have a conversation with this gentleman, not the friend, but the friend gave me his phone number, and I called, and he in fact did study with Elohe, but I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know his name. He told me everything he has, what he's still working on, and he would like to present for his black belt in Kaivalu Lua. So, the discussions have begun, and they do. I don't have any of Alohe's records of his friends, their relationships, what they spoke about. What they were collaborating on, if at all, and also those that said they studied with him, because lots of people say that when master die, they're going to say that
nice.
about me too. So I'm
Yeah,
keeping a very strict record of even those that I have studied with me dismissed but are not welcome back. So I'm keeping a very strict record, but none of us have that from Olohe, so it's
oh,
kind of hard to navigate through that.
yeah. What about the art and his own children? Um, are they anyone practicing, anyone keeping it alive, or have they just have the arts gone to sleep within the family itself? How's that working?
I think the arts went to sleep within the family for a while. I know that one of the sons was very active in boxing and was teaching box, which of course is our Hawaiian boxing. It's our Lua, very proficient strikers. So he may not have been using the animals per se, but he was working with it with them. And then I understand that one of the other sons is back now training, and I think that's absolutely magnificent. And they're all in their mid to late mid 50s and upward now, so you're maybe even 50, yeah, 55 and up. So um it's in their body, and I hope that they have their own personal relationship still, but not in the public, and nor are they teaching, from what I understand.
Do you have any questions at the moment?
Yes, you mentioned the tournaments in the 1980s. So could you say something about sort of kind of what kind of rules and what kinds of people were sort of participating in these tournaments?
Oh my gosh, so you had every art. I mean, that is the melting pot. And when the Long Beach Internationals was drawing thousands and thousands and thousands of people from all over the world. It's where Bruce Lee demoed. It's all of the greats and the pioneers were there, and so it was very serious business. It's very much, Cobra Kai, very much Karate Kid. Is
Yeah.
yes, very serious. And Alohi was in the heart of it with his children and his students.
Let me just double click on that, Michelle, if that's okay. So do you know in what year he started participating in the Long Beach Internationals?
Not specifically, but I can get you that information.
And how well did he know Mike Stone? So funnily enough, I've been in very deep conversations with him. He now lives in Philippines. So yeah, he's in
Very
a good.
close. He's
Okay.
very close with Mike Stone. Yeah.
Okay.
Then again, I knew that just by the his mana would give off how uh you could tell they spoke frequently, and they had a nice friendship. So you
Okay.
should ask Mike about it.
I will. I will ask Mike.
Yeah.
I didn't know Mike and
So
him knew each other well. Mike's a very interesting guy. So
yes, he is. Years
Yeah.
and tournaments. Okay. I'm making an ongoing list of what you
Yeah.
need from me.
And then so obviously he worked with Ed Parker for a while. I suppose they knew each other if he was demoing at Long Beach Internationals.
Yes. And they were also cousins.
Oh, okay.
So I have a personal story, which is recent. It's last June. I was invited to the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame, and this is for Parker's group. And they wanted to honor cousins of Kempo, and they obviously want the Hawaiian aspect. So the gentleman I was speaking with was really, really nice man, and I thought, okay, well, why not? And so I went, and that Friday night before the Saturday event, they had three scholars, martial scholars, Kempo scholars, present a very short 20-30 minute presentation. The first gentleman that got up and was speaking about the universal system. He's written a book. He's evolved what Parker had as far as footwork. So the
Mm,
kane, the man,
mm.
which was is just to me is probably the most important in our Lua, is your proficiency in your lower body to get you where you need to go and to be able to dodge properly and react. And what I saw there was so shocking to me. I was like someone had tased me. I was sitting there watching this footwork, and I'm like, this is our clock system, and this is our bow and arrow, our warrior stance. This is our knight. This is our movements, and we even use it in warrior massage. And I thought, how how is this so similar? And I thought, oh my gosh, could it be that Parker and Kaivalu got together quietly and worked with one another? So who contributed what here? And so I called one of uh, my brothers who had been with Olohe for a very long time, who knew a lot about the circuit, was there for some of it, and was just in it with Olohe at that time. And he is also a cousin of Olohe, is Joe Kahapea. And so I reached out to him and I said, Joe, is there any way? He's like, oh yeah, they met a couple times, but Olohe kept it quiet. And I thought, there you go. I knew it. I knew that there was some sort of collaboration happening here. I just don't know if Olohe gave that to Parker or Parker gave that to Olohe,
Do you
but
know
they're almost identical.
do you know the name of the book, Michelle?
I can get that for you.
Please.
Yeah, Universal System. Yanovich, I'll have to look. Universal. The gentleman is located near the Seattle area. System book and
Well,
scholar. I'll get you the scholar's name.
yeah, that'll be great because for us to compare and also just to show how widespread his influence went. So it'll be good to get
Yes.
that. Okay. So I think any other questions, gentlemen, from you for the moment now?
Yeah, I have two questions. You spoke about the Black Belt Association, like sharing bits of Lua to other people. Do you remember when it was happening?
No, but I will get you that date.
Yeah. Okay,
It had,
thanks.
it had
Thank
its
you.
own patch, its own certificate, its own obviously the ranking system was based on where the individual came in, but I will get you that as well.
Yeah.
One weird
Dates.
question.
Uh-huh.
Feel free to ignore it if it's off. But was this with the Kilohana guys or was this a different organization?
No, but some of the gentlemen, one in particular who I love, um, some of them came through the World Black Belt Association and eventually transitioned to Kaivalu Lua.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Yanni, you had one more question, I believe?
Yes, I thought about that Jerry Walker connection. Do you know what decade it started? It was 70s,
When
80s,
did they meet?
90s. When
Oh my gosh, Aloha Walker could tell you, but at one point, Alohe Kaivalu made him the historian of Kaivalu Lua. And I think this was 89. Um, Walker he has a membership card to the Kaivalu Lua. So they were good friends. But let me ask him. So I'll ask Walker. He calls me every day, so I can ask him
Okay,
when he calls.
thank you.
Okay.
So I think we have a few asks of you. So I think we should.
Yeah.
This is a good stopping point for today. Yeah.
I'd like to
Mich-
share two more things if I
Please, please,
could.
please.
Okay.
Yes.
It's noteworthy to know that Alohe, as the youngest, him and his family survived Pearl Harbor, and he was just turned 6. He spoke about the gas masks and the canned foods and the way of life for almost a year. And that was, you could tell when he spoke about that, that was really traumatizing to him, even in his older age when he was talking to us about it. Let me see here. And I think it's important to tell you that Olohe released his only book in 2006, June of 2006. So it reads like almost like a police manual. So this was his only book, and this wouldn't have come to fruition without the strong nudging by another Kumu Lua, David Dye, who came in through the World Black Belt Association, who is a soke of Aikujitsu. So it's Aikido mixed with Lua and Aiki Lua. That's it. And David, years ago, received permission from the family to do another production because obviously it's sold out. You can find this online for like $600+ used. So it is a sought after book. And then as far as weapon making, this you'll find fascinating. There's almost like we're one generation directly from Alohi, but there's these time periods. So in the 1990s, Olohe really started to hone in on his weapon making, and he then started to introduce it to his current students and refining and honing his weapon making skills. He had a wood shop in the back, and like I said, he was either working out for himself, perfecting his system, teaching, or making weapons. And the two weapon makers now that are premier within our lineage are Ron Burns and Greg Shaner, and I enjoy it very, very much myself. But they really have the wood shop and the wood skills, and I go and make weapons there with them. I'm grateful when I am invited. I have my long to-do list. But Alohi didn't really start adding weapons until the 90s. So that means all of those tournament students do not have the knowledge of the weaponry. And so I was speaking to another Kumu who I mentioned from the earlier days of the tournament fighting and tournament forms, and he doesn't even know the names of the weapons. So
Mm.
this is the type of discrepancy you see between different students joining at different times and what they were exposed to. That goes to show you, Lohe focuses in and teaches only that. Unlike me, I have warrior levels. They're only exposed to certain things at the right time. For the black belt class, whatever he felt like teaching, that's what we were learning. We had no written curriculum. We didn't know what we were going to do when we arrived. If you didn't take notes as you got to your car, it was such rapid fire you would forget most of it, right? And then you may never see it ever again, or you may see it again 7 years later, and you'll say, oh my gosh, I remember doing this. But the weaponry now, if you joined like 90, 95, and you were with Olohe as a disciple, as a dedicated student, then you learn the weaponry. And so there's these differences between pre 1990 and past, post 1990. And I'm so grateful to have learned all of these weapons and proficiently. They're just magnificent, and there's so many, and there are some that are just Kaivalu. He added his own little pocky knife to the end of a knuckle duster, shark knuckle duster. Um, there's a longer maka pahoa, which is for the eyes, the
Right.
handheld, the prong, double prong. He changed things a little bit. His double sticks, one is 20 inches and the other is 24, and you hold the 20 in the right hand in the center and the 24 at the 1/3 mark here. So why would you do that? He
Right.
had some very specific weaponry that were just solely his. And in the 1980s, he also met Michael Matsuda of the Martial Arts History Museum. Michael didn't start the museum at that time. It was kind of like out of his trunk traveling this martial arts exhibit. But as he started his magazine, as he found a location, excuse me, for the museum, Alohe and Michael were like this. It was a very interesting relationship that Alohe really didn't publicly support very many. He was going through his own stuff.
Mm.
but he remained very close with Michael Matsuda. I have had the honor of continuing that relationship. And Alohe's weaponry, a Lua weaponry exhibit, there's only one, that's at the Martial Arts History Museum in Glendale, California, and it's the Kaiwalu Lua exhibit. And it is such an honor to be a guardian of that and to have the weaponry there and to be able to speak about it, talk about the evolution, the dimensions, and the integrity of each weapon, why they were designed the way they were, and how we use them, the
Yeah.
multiple uses, and how the body dictates that, not the weapon. So it's very, very wonderful to see that still there as a permanent exhibit, and all of them are made by Alohe's hand, with his mana, with his blessing. And now, last year, I was able to add a couple weapons from Kumu Ron Burns and Kumu Greg Shaner. So pretty exciting to have that there to represent. It's our own little Bishop Museum, if you will,
No, I
when it
get it.
comes to weaponry. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I think at some point we should even get the photographs of that for the book, and so that that is recorded correctly.
Okay.
So
Thank you for letting me share.
no, please, no, please feel free to jump in anytime and tell me to shut up. That's perfectly okay. I think we'll work on this and start building this out, and then once we get the syllabus and those things from you, Michelle, if you can just send it to
Yes, I
me,
have a
then I'll
list.
make sure we'll get it to the others, and then what we'll do is maybe next week. Are you open to speaking about the Vahinis and the women of Lua, what you know about it, and the
Yes,
arts of
absolutely.
the female? So then that'll give us
Yeah.
time, at least for us to, if you are able to send me some of the information, at least the syllabus and things like that this weekend, then we can at least start processing it and then figure out in the following weeks how to structure the rest of the conversations.
Okay, sounds good. I'll get all of that to you before we even meet. Yeah, it's an honor.
No,
So, what else about the Wahine would you like for me to gather
oh,
beyond names and regions and
names,
time periods?
regions, what they did, what made the Wahines and their fighting different. What was their training like? How did the hula dancing and the fighting come together? And good God, I can't move my hips like that. But how the hell do you move the hips like that? And because it's a very specific way of moving, and it's hard. I was playing with that with Timmy, and I was like, oh my God, I can't move it.
Well, it's separating like in hula and lua, our pico, our belly button is the horizon. And so everything above that would be above the water and
Yeah.
below. But it's to cut off from the waist. And then the wahine can do certain things here. So like, you when you parry and you move to 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock and your opponent's still at 12. So the man is still, the hips are still going to two, but the wahine is turned, inward sometimes for a counter. So it's the same as hula because you separate.
Yeah, so it'll be great to actually hear that in as much detail and in whatever way that you want to share this. And I
Well,
think
maybe
most
I can go to the Palua next week and actually demo some stuff
that'll
physically.
be
Would that be helpful?
that'll be great too. So demo and show and talk through it. So that'll be the best way to actually get
I
a
will do
thing.
that too, also when we discuss the weaponry, because I'll
Yes,
just pull out my personal weapons bag and
yes,
show you, and I'll bring some of the weapons that Olohe made to show you as well.
perfect.
But it is something to be noted that in ancient times it was the men that were the hula dancers, not the women.
Yeah, I've
So,
heard that, and yet at the same time, I think at least in the recent times, it's all been the focus has been on the women, though, right?
well, it's patriarchal now, not so
Yeah.
matriarchal. So, women were seen as um, directly divine. So like everything that was, they birth everything from spirit or po into the physical plane and return it back. Where the men were seen as having to do rituals and hula and things like that in order to have the divine impart information into. So it's interesting. Part of the kapu, the society rules, the sacredness of roles, and that's why they were such efficient people back in the day. Not
Yeah.
everyone wanted to be CEO and chief,
Yes.
and king. And we all had our roles, and it
Roles.
reminds me of Europe, where everyone whether they're a CEO or they're working at the gas station or at the restaurant. They love what they do. This is
Yeah.
their trade. They've
Yeah.
And so, yeah, instead of Americans wanting to be everything at all at once. So,
Yes. No, that
okay,
makes
so at
sense.
one
I think
o'clock.
that'll be great. 1 o'clock, and if for whatever reason, say you want to move it forward or whatever, if you are not able to demo for any reason, don't hesitate. Just drop me a message, and then we'll figure something out.
All good. I'm set. I'm confirmed. That
Okay.
sounds wonderful. So the 28th
Yeah,
at 1 p.m. Pacific. Okay.
I had
Thank you both.
one more question.
Yanni? Yes.
You mentioned
Yeah.
that Olohe taught the Air Force pilots. So did he serve himself also in the military?
Yes, he was there,
He
and he
did.
was at at Bitburg, Germany, and he was also, he played football during high school, but then also boxed during his time in the military. So I think that's how he got hooked up with some of the other gentlemen that were serving. So yes, he served there. And in fact, a beautiful end note is he met his wife who didn't speak any English. He spoke no German. He played the ukulele for her and fell in love. And he brought her home with him. And she's still alive, still healthy, and a very strong woman, mentally, physically, emotionally. And you wouldn't expect any other type of woman to survive a man like Solomon. So she had to be a German, of course. It's the way it is. But it's such a beautiful story that he didn't just go to serve; he actually met his life, the love of his life, and his life partner. So really beautiful story.
Cool. That's a wonderful.
When did this happen? Was that in between the
19, I
wars
think I gave
or?
the exact, yeah, it was the exact date is 1950, 1955 to 1960. He was there.
And did he enlist himself or was it conscription?
No, he was active. Yeah, Air
Yeah.
Force. Yeah, U.S. Air Force.
All right, Michelle. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. Just wait until it uploads.